Today I have another new episode, and these sessions we're gonna discuss on the music could be medicine for mental health. We have our expert, Professor Rob. We have another speaker, Mr. Maki. He also joined today's sessions. So, Mr. Rob, what do you mean by mental health? How you want to analyze mental health?
Well, so for mental health, it's kind of different for every person. But from a standpoint of mental health, what we're talking about is the ability to function within society to a degree that the individual is content or even happy with that interaction. When you've got bad mental health, you have conflict and often internal conflict. You're unhappy, and you're unhappy even when you're by yourself. Mental health can be improved or degraded by external influences, and the influence we're talking about here is music. And music has been, this was kind of highlighted as music as medicine. It's not. Music as therapy has been successful in helping people deal with a variety of issues, including pain. Like a computer, you have only so much capability to take input, and apparently listening to music takes up a lot of that bandwidth and then reduces your focus on the pain you have. It doesn't make the pain go away per se, but in terms of a relative, sorry, phone's ringing. In terms of relative influence, it can lower the influence the pain has in your life, and so it's affected that way. Certain types of music can help with studying and memory. But the music can't be distracting in nature. So the more vocally oriented the music, the more distracting it becomes, and then it becomes more of a distraction than a help in terms of memory. Music can be used for sleep. Studies have indicated, there was a study that was done where people fell asleep listening to audiobooks, fell asleep listening to nothing, and fell asleep listening to music, relaxing music, not rock. And the people that fell asleep during music actually had better, was measured as higher quality sleep than those that either didn't have any sound or that were listening to audiobooks. So it does help you relax. Music can be used for exercise, again, as kind of a distraction. But it also can get your blood up, get your heart moving, and allow you to have the energy that you need for the exercise. And music has been shown to be beneficial. The right kind of music as being beneficial to at least dealing with the symptoms of depression. Doesn't deal with the causes, of course, but the cause is music. But can deal with the symptoms of depression, making you feel better, allowing you to lose yourself in the music, and kind of distract you from whatever is causing the depression in the first place. So it has a viable medical utility, mostly to deal with the symptoms. I haven't seen anything that indicates that music deals with the causes of degrading mental health, which can be chemical, can be environmental, can be biological. Some mental health problems are hereditary, but it can deal with the symptoms, and so it becomes one of the many tools that you can use to kind of improve and manage your health and well-being.
Mm-hmm. When we discuss about mental health, right now we have an environment after COVID, like the economical challenge because of this war. I think artificial intelligence also come to this. Corporations, many people may lose their job. Uh, there is a huge change, more challenge, more uh, more activities happening around the world. So, what do you think? It's create negative impact in mental health, or how we can manage this stress?
Well, it really depends on where you are. If the news of the world is causing you stress, the best advice is to turn it off. You don't have to listen to news every night. It's like doom scrolling on the internet. You can just say no. A lot of people get on the internet and they just start doom scrolling, and by the time they're done, they want to jump out of a window. That's just an easy no. Once you find yourself doom scrolling, stop. If the news is driving you nuts, don't listen to it. There's really most of what you see on news programs today aren't things that you have to listen to in order to survive the world. Generally, people will tell you something that you need to know in order to do your job or to function. Now that doesn't mean that certain programs like business-oriented news programs can't be beneficial in terms of managing portfolios, but general news by and large irritates a lot of us. And most of us find that the best path is to just turn that off and find something more pleasant to do. And that's really true of a lot of things that are causing people aggravation, be that people, work environment. You have an opportunity to say no. You can change jobs. You don't have to be with people that drive you insane. You can create distance. I did that with a good chunk of my family myself. And I'm much happier for it. So they're just a case of really kind of understanding. I said this prior. You kind of need to own your own mental health. If you've got a problem, depending on somebody else, whether it's a family member or a psychological professional, to help you alone, it doesn't work like medicine. You don't take a shot and get better. There are some medications that can help, but in the end, you have to own it, because even with medications, you have to take the medication. And if you don't, you'll degrade. And a lot of the violence we've had of late with people that have mental health are often connected to the fact they weren't taking their meds. And don't get me wrong, the meds very often change you. But those are your choices. You can either experience the disaster connected to the problem, or you can work aggressively to try to fix it. But you have to own it. There just is no other way. There's no magical fairy with a mental health wand that's going to wave over your head and say, now you're better. And for a lot of folks, sometimes it's just understanding that you're not broken in the first place. A lot of times people are convinced they're broken by the people around them, and they're not. The people around them broken. I think I told the story last time about my parents sending me to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist, after an hour session, came back and says, yeah, you're fine for a kid your age. I need to talk to your parents. And that was the last time I saw a psychiatrist. So at the end it's really kind of taking responsibility for mental health, ascertaining what you think the causes of your mental health pain are, and then addressing those causes aggressively and with a high priority, and the hope that you can make them go away. Be aware that really, and I'll say this categorically, suicide is not the answer, and often it is found to be the answer by a disturbingly large number of people. If you're feeling at all suicidal or self-destructive, there are helplines and facilities that you can talk to. But that's one case where, if you're really feeling you're going down that particular route, you need to seek help right away. Get somebody you can talk to, and get help to remove yourself from whatever situation you're in that you're in trouble. Just recognize that as you look out in the world, there are always ways to get around whatever problem that you have. And I've even met people that were in prison that were perfectly happy with the life that they had in prison, and if they can be happy doing that, whatever's going on in your life would be secondary in nature. So find help if you've got a dire problem, but take ownership, focus on the issues once they're identified as the causes, and make it a goal to get better and have good mental health. One other thing with regard to music and internet and the rest of it, recent studies have also indicated as we get older, the more we engage our mind, the better chance we have of not having infirmity. And not losing cognitive capability. So, strangely enough, actually browsing the web for an older person is a good thing, as long as they're engaging with the content and going through it, and listening to music or anything else that and particularly playing music. I should add that another study indicated that people that had developed musical skills seem to do far better with regard to mental health and being able to focus on projects and carrying forward. It's not just listening, but actually creating music that can be very beneficial. And then I'll pass.
Thank you. Mr. David Schumacher, we are discussing on mental health. What do you think? Music could be medicine for mental health?
Yeah, I absolutely think that it can. I have anecdotal evidence on my part where I think music has helped greatly. But anecdotal information, while that can be useful individual by individual, I suppose, if it works for you, taking the pragmatic approach, evidence base is always nice too. So I quickly did a little digging around to see whether my assumptions were founded. And I was actually quite pleased with some of the things that I found that collaborated things that I think that I've learned on my own by using music for not only mental health, which is the subject of today, but I think putting yourself in that right mind state has also helped me improve my physical health. And I can trace that back to music as well. But so to check some of my assumptions, I went out to the Cleveland Clinic, which is well known here in the United States. And I found an article that talked about how the U.S. War Department in 1945 was using medical therapy for veterans. So, I mean, this goes back a long ways. And then more recent uses in their clinics and others, they report physical attributes such as lowering of blood pressure with this therapy, memory improvements, enhanced communication and social skills, especially when you experience music with others, say going to a concert, or so you have that social interaction that comes along as well. And then certain types of music, maybe all, but at least certain types of music invoke some type of self-reflection. What was the meaning? What was the mood? What was the feeling? Maybe they're singing and there's words, the lyrics. So what did the lyrics carry with it? What was the message? Coping skills seemed improved. General motivation by individuals seemed improved. Use of pain medications decreased. And people expressed, subjectively, of course, an increase in their joy level. So it's nice to see that, I think, from what I consider to be a reputable source. And I'm sure that if you or I or anyone took the time to go do a little more research, perhaps we could even find more information about this. But when I saw the subject of your show, I was thinking, how has this worked for me? And I realized that just music, just sitting down and just listening and just putting myself in a more peaceful place helped. And even if I listened to music, like say back during the darkest days of the pandemic, where I was very socially isolated, as many people were, some of the online, like, what am I trying to say? Without naming specific venues on the internet, they arranged watch parties. And I participated in a few of those. And you could comment through the keyboard or talk on a side channel. And you had a shared music experience even when you were alone, even when you couldn't go out. Those kind of things are still available in some regards. So there's a lot of different aspects that, or maybe a better way to say it is, there's no excuse for not listening to music, certainly by yourself. And there's certainly, I think, no excuse for listening to music, even with others, even if you can't get out and about. And if there is evidence that this can help you, then why would you not do that? And then I go to the anecdotal information that I have, and I say, from past experience, I know that this has helped me. It may help you. Try it. But I want to loop in some of the things that Rob said, because I was nodding my head in agreement quite a lot as Rob was talking. And I think the words "own it" really helped as far as that was concerned. If you've got a situation, we're talking maybe mental stress, strain, whatever that might be here, you can play victim, or you can own it. And I think owning it, that taking responsibility, is really the first step. And I think it's the first step for a couple of different reasons. If you don't take that first step, who's going to do that? Are you going to rely on somebody else to try to pull you out of whatever it is you're going through? Perhaps, maybe there's someone there that will do that, but it's still better for you to own it. And I'm once again talking from personal experience, because when I own something, it becomes mine to improve, that I can take pride in. And it's in itself, just the act of owning it is going to help me anyway with emotional issues, with mental issues, with whatever those things might be. And then looping in the social interactions that Rob talked about, I think are also very important. Talking to others, participating in a group environment. We humans, most of us anyway, seem to be really built that way, to operate in social circles, because it engages our mind. It engages all the different aspects of us and gets us outside of ourselves. Many times when we're in that funk, we're only focused on what's wrong and how bad our situation is. And when we talk to others, we open that up and we can let good in, we can let bad out, and we can help somebody else, which can also help us. So the engaging of our mind, engaging of our emotions, all help that. And I tell you, I can read inspirational literature, and it's nice, but listening to inspirational music lifts me up much, much higher. So there's another subjective response for why I think music is such a good idea. And staying away from the doom scrolling, whether that be at 6 o'clock at night here in the US watching the news, or watching the 24-hour news channels that always have to have something to shock us about. Takes us out of that negative well to where we don't perhaps have to pull ourselves back out of it so much. So, Rob, thanks for your comments, and I look forward to hearing some more.
Thank you. Mr. Rob.
I'm not sure how much more I've got. I'm not exactly a psychiatrist or psychologist, so I kind of walked through my entire brain dump on music and mental health. So unless, Sharif, you've got some specific questions where I can take this in a different direction, I'd just be thrashing from this point on.
Yeah, let's say we are discussing on, yes, music can be helpful for the mental health. So especially when we discuss about mental health, we are discussing about solutions. Is there any other alternative, like beside this music, like it can be helpful for our
Well,
audience?
always talking to some. I mean, if you're having trouble identifying the causes for the problem, then a psychologist or a psychiatrist can be helpful. Going to somebody, but even going to somebody that you trust. Often, I found when I was growing up, just talking to somebody that I trusted and just walking through things, help put stuff in perspective, and recognize that a lot of times when you're getting upset or you're aggravated, and particularly when you're saying, "Well, my aggravation is because of X," or "My aggravation is because of Y." Your mental health is contained within you. You choose how you react to things. That's a choice. If somebody's making you angry, they're not really making you angry. You're getting angry. You're allowing them to influence you, and that's a choice. And once you realize it's a choice, have you ever seen, there are films on YouTube of police officers doing a traffic stop, and the person they're traffic stopping is calling them names, being incredibly abusive, and the officer just kind of keeps going through their script. They don't react. They don't get angry. Hand the person the ticket, and they move on and recognize if the officer had gotten angry because they're being taped, obviously, or reacted, it would have reflected badly on them, and they would have been angry for the entire day, probably after that, and probably would have been angry at every subsequent person they pulled over. But the experienced officers notice that it's not them. The person's having a bad day or just getting upset. No reason to react. Just do the job and move on to the next one, and enjoy most of the rest of the time, which is by yourself, listening to music or listening to the radio while you're waiting for something else to occur. So it's a good example of a choice that you make. Same thing if you're doing a lot of interaction with people. You're a barrister and a barista. Sorry, barrister's an attorney. A barista, and somebody gets nasty with you because their order wasn't up fast enough, or has that. That's them. You don't have to internalize that. You can continue to be nice. And here's something you want to be really evil is sometimes when somebody's just being really angry and carrying on, you being nice and smiling and carrying on is one of the most annoying things you could possibly do. And you're being well. It's not affecting you. They're trying to hurt you. They're trying to make you angry, and it's having absolutely no impact. And at some point, I've seen people that are really good at this just start to laugh. and when it's over, they're done. Well, the other person just for the rest of the day about what went on. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that a lot, because sometimes when people get really angry, they can act out physically. But the thing is you control your own reaction to the environment around you. In some cases, you can move to a better environment. Some cases, you can just lose yourself in the thought. I know when I'm sitting someplace and I'm in a really long line and don't have anything else to do, I'll pull out my phone and I'll read. Pass the time. And if I don't have a phone, I'll write a book in my head. I'll tell the story that I'd like to write about something, and I can kill hours that way, and I'm perfectly happy to do it. These are mechanisms that I've developed to cope with issues in my life. I'm on an airplane and I'm compressed. I've got a big guy next to me. I'm in a regular coach seat, so my knees are in my stomach. I can find ways to just kind of entertain myself, and whatever it is just goes by and it's done, and I move on. I don't really think about it or grouse about it or complain and scream at the stewardess, because I recognize that they're going through the same kinds of things. And also, what I also found is if you're just nice to other people and you just make a habit of being nice regardless of what's going on, it kind of reflects on your attitude as well. If you're even-handed with others, they tend to be more even-handed with you, and treat you well. I've often seen, and I'm flummoxed by the fact that sometimes I've seen people go into restaurants and they're unhappy with the seat they've got, or the food didn't come out fast enough, or there's some little thing that was wrong with their dinner, and they send the food back and they yell at the waiter. And I've worked in foods. I know what people do to your food when you do stuff like that. There is no upside to this. And there are people that say, hey, why should I tip? I paid for the meal. I don't need to give a tip to anybody. And just think of the attitude that is. I mean, you're basically in your head stealing from somebody else, because the wait staff largely lives on tips. That's their salary. So when you short them on a tip, you're basically telling them that you don't value their service. And once again, it's kind of upsetting them, but it says something about you as well. I tend to try to over tip. There was I believe a movie was called Blue Moon going way back, and Steve Martin was in it. He says, I don't believe in tipping. What I believe in is over tipping. He said, what happens when you over tip is that people get to know you. They want to have you as a customer, and they treat you better. It's like having elite status. If you get the same waiter and you've over tipped, they want to serve your table. They want to help you. They want that over tip again. So it doesn't cost you that much, and you can end up with a better experience as opposed to trying to aggravate the other person and then waiting for them to respond. Either accept your abuse and not do anything, or passively aggressively return the abuse, or actually aggressively return the abuse, which is even worse. So there's just a way to kind of step back and look at your life and say, what kind of a person do you want to be? And what I've found, at least from my experience, is the nicer you are, the more that you control your anger, and let it reflect on the people that are angry around you. The more that you were, all of us can have an angry moment. For instance, somebody cuts you off. I watch road rage videos all the time, mostly just to make sure I never go there. So somebody cut somebody else off, and there was a guy I was watching on a news program the other day. He just got really upset. He was chasing the woman down to cut him off, and a police officer saw what the hell he was doing, and he was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon, which definitely just would destroy his entire day. So on the other end, if somebody cut you off, okay, it was really important for them to have that spot in front of you. Is the 3 seconds really that you lost by him or her doing it? Most often him doing that. Was that really worth getting all that aggravated about and driving like an insane person? It's not. They want the space that bad. Go for it, buddy. It becomes somebody else's problem. You're not mine. So in the end, just having an even-handed personality, being nice to people whenever you get a chance, it pays dividends, but it also has a lot to do with your mental health. If you're not angry all the time, and I see people, but I see a lot of people these days that seem to be angry all the time. A lot of that is from the news, but they seem to be angry all the time. They're lashing out at their family. They're lashing out at their friends. They're driving aggressively. It's just going to end badly for them. And there's no upside to that. If the world's making you angry, read a book, listen to some music, relax. Things will go on whether you throw a temper tantrum or not, and the temper tantrum is only going to hurt you. So and by the way, children are kicked to watch that way. You can watch a small child that doesn't get what they want, and they have this major temper tantrum, and it doesn't exactly. Sometimes the parents will give them what they want, which, by the way, I think is a mistake because it just reinforces the behavior. But after it's all over, did they really improve anything? Now they've kind of beat themselves up. Nobody wants to be around them because they're a little pill. And for children that don't know any better, you can kind of say, okay, well, they don't know any better, but we're adults. We know better. Temper tantrums don't work for us. Like lying on the floor and kicking and screaming don't help. I've watched those videos as well. So in the end, kind of own your behavior and just be nice. I'm not sure I'm a religious believer in karma, but I like to adopt the karma concept of you treat somebody well, it'll come back to you in spades. Whether or not it does or not doesn't really matter to me, but it reinforces my desire just to be a good person. And at the end of the life, being able to look back and say, I did my best to be a good person. That's good enough. And maybe that's what a lot more of us should do. We should picture ourselves at the end of life and figure out how we want that memory to look and craft it. We got the opportunity to craft it when we're young and older, and when we're in those last 5 minutes when we know we're going to pass. And I remember reading about Steve Jobs very specifically when he passed, and recognizing that I just don't want a lot of regrets. I want to be able to look back and say I had a good life, not regret what I've done. And so I work towards that. And I honestly think that's a way for people to kind of manage their mental health. Just plan your life the way you'd like to look back on it, and by doing that, just be a better you. And I think it'll play. It certainly has paid dividends for my mental health. I think it'll pay dividends for yours.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher.
Well, a number of thoughts came to my mind there. I wanted to go back and just touch on music just a touch more, and then comment on a couple of things that Rob said that I, once again, agree with. But I was talking very highly about all the positive aspects of music, but nothing's 100%, and even music isn't 100%. So I'm reminded that not all music that you would maybe listen to can be good for your therapy. There can be very violent music, very maybe perhaps discordant music. Music that's excessively loud might not also be good. Certainly wouldn't be good probably for your auditory tract, but then, I think it also has, effects inside the brain. So I just wanted to balance that a little bit. Yeah, music for therapy is great, but, pick wisely there, just like you would pick wisely for any other sources. And if you find yourself, which we all do from time to time, and needs to take a mental health break, maybe it's a good idea to try to identify what the agitators are, what's going on. We talked about the evening news a bit, but there can be other things, radio shows that you might listen to, or reading a book, reading magazines, whether it's online or whether it's in the more traditional form. Those can all be good. But also keep in mind that those kind of things too can be adding to your aggravation as well. So pick your sources. Pick the music that you would listen to. If it's in a therapy setting, that's going to be worked out, I would trust. But if you're doing this for yourself, pick the music that you would listen to. Pick an appropriate level to listen to. Perhaps especially careful if you're using headphones and so forth, which can be nice. And identify the sources of these aggravations. I think when I first came in, I think Rob said something about relatives, and I had relatives here this last weekend, and they're beautiful, and I enjoyed them for 3 days, and they were probably happy to go home, and I was happy to come back to a quiet house. So this aggravation can come from things that you dearly love as well. Maybe too much of a good thing. Something to consider. Now, going way back, I remember back in my early days of college education, taking a psychology course. And no, I'm not a psychologist. It was an elective for what I was pursuing. But it started out from the physical plane. It started out with the idea that how does information get into you? And we're going to examine this. So they went through the senses and how everything worked and what the effect on the brain were and so forth. And we finally got to a open lab situation. Must have been 100 people in this theater on the campus, maybe more. And it was a biofeedback demonstration. And I thought this was really interesting because this is perhaps an evidence-based way of being able to look at what agitates you, what you can do to actually control it yourself, and what therapies, what remedies can take into account. Now, in this biofeedback demonstration, people were hooked up to sensors and then given specific mental tasks to do. And the audience could watch along and see what was happening to their blood pressure, to their heart rate, skin temperature, a number of these different indicators. And it was, I thought, very interesting to be able to watch along and see that given a task to do, they could change the physical responses that were being measured. That lends credence, I think, to this idea of music therapy. And I wonder, I haven't done the research on it, but I wonder if that sort of thing happens when music therapy is being applied in a clinical setting. It would seem reasonable that it would. So just a passing thought based on a very, very old college memory. Now, on to the idea of a couple of things that Rob brought up that I found interesting was his idea on mindset to do about tipping, showing gratitude, which builds something in you and also passes something on positive to the people that are around you. My visitors that were visiting me here in Phoenix this weekend were from the Las Vegas area. And then in downtown Las Vegas is different from the Las Vegas Strip, in the fact that many of the hotels, casinos in downtown Las Vegas play to the old, perhaps glory days of Las Vegas, the Rat Pack, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Joey Bishop days. And downtown, there's this restaurant called Triple George. And I've been there a time or two. I was introduced to it on a business dinner meeting. And that's a rather unusual name for a restaurant, I thought. So I inquired and found out that they have, I think there's a plaque or something in the restaurant that explains what the term means. And it's a Rat Pack term. These guys were known to be very extravagant. And when they would come into a place, especially a place that they hadn't been, but into any place, they would tip heavily from the time they walked through the door. They didn't wait for the check. They tipped everybody heavily the whole evening on. And as you might imagine, they got the very, very, very highest and best service anywhere they went. And whether it was they coined that term or it was coined by their observation, that's what Triple George is. When somebody in Vegas says, you're Triple George, you're being extravagant to the point of showing extravagant kindness, extravagant good positive benefits. And what you put out tends to come back to you. A lot of religions have some type of rule or some type of saying about that, and it's a general human principle. But you're improving other people's experience, improving your own, and that is typically a win-win. One final thing. Nothing is totally good or totally bad, like I started with. And I think tantrums fall into that too. I think adult tantrums in public are horrible. We're just showing how immature we are. However, go into your office, go home when nobody else is around, turn up the music real loud and have a really good tantrum and let out those frustrations for the day. Perhaps that can be very therapeutic too. So it's another way of getting all that negative energy outside of you and goes back to good mental health. And with that, I'm dry for a moment. I'll pass it back to you, Sharif.
Thank you. Let's talk about music. Like, I want to know more about US culture. Like, in your education system, somehow music play a role? Like, is there any course?
Oh, you can take classes. you can take classes in music. I mean, I don't recall it being a requirement when I was in school. And while I was forced to take piano lessons, which I hated, and then never learned the piano. Instead I went out and bought a mechanical robotic piano and had it play itself, just because. Apparently I decided I didn't want to take the trouble of piano lessons, but I was probably going to drop $5,000 in an automated piano that would play itself. The logic at that age was disturbing. Anyway, so it's not a requirement, but there are things like Glee Club, or at least there were things like Glee Club, and band that you could go into if you're musically inclined, and different music classes that you could attend depending on the grammar school. And as you went up into upper education, there were advanced classes that you could take, and then when you got to truly advanced, generally you go to a specialized school that specializes in that kind of training. At least I wasn't aware of advanced training, master's degree music training, other than in musical history or something along those lines in the schools that I did my graduate and undergraduate work. But they could have been. I just didn't. It wasn't something I was interested in. But education institutions do provide a vehicle for you to gain music experience. But same thing with acting, by the way. My 4 years of acting training was all in college. But often if you're serious about entertainment, a lot of folks move into actually entertaining early. Your big entertainers tend to kind of peak fairly young, as focused on that, and they start entertaining as a way to cover it. That doesn't mean that you don't get people that go to advanced training as well, and they gain the context they need to get the gigs that they'll want when they come out the back end. But there are a lot of ways to get to musical excellence that don't require college. And at least in my observation, a lot of those may depending on how you go through it, may be faster than traditional education. But yeah, there are outlets for music. It's not a requirement though, other than singing the national anthem at one particular time, which was when I started a requirement, and certainly as I got upper education, not that it would have been funny to start belting out the national anthem in the morning in some class arbitrarily just for the hell of it. But the fact is short of something that was connected to the national anthem, there was really no requirement. When I was going to school, David, was there a requirement when you were going to school with regard to music?
Yeah, it depended where you went. There was more of an expectation, I think, than a requirement. Now that I think about it, I took the trumpet for a few years, and then didn't get back to that. Later on, did pick up the piano a little bit. But there was an expectation that you did something like that, and there was also like a foreign language expectation as well. And I think for one of the courses of study I had, it was in high school, I think you had to have at least one class in a foreign language. But I'll just pick up from that, if you don't mind, and kind of run with that a little bit. So music in school, when I started young, like I mentioned, I took that trumpet, and that was expected. And I didn't really understand why. And I'm not sure that maybe general society did at the time. There seemed to be more of an attitude that liberal arts was still a bona fide education at that time. I think we might be coming back to that now. We've gone through this quite a period of time for STEM education. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics seems to be turning to STEAM, and the A that's thrown in there is for the arts. And I think people are realizing that to balance out our brain processes and our life in general, that artistic side is necessary. Is there evidence for that? Well, my evidence is people like Isaac Newton and others, the great polymaths of the past, seem to have been very well-rounded individuals. They were extremely well-gifted in the areas that we probably know them for, like the science of Newton, but he was also very well-gifted in other areas as well. And that gifting had been developed because that was part of the educational requirements of the day. Now we're going back hundreds of years. But I think we're starting to see that again, that too narrow of a focus for education doesn't leave us with individuals that are happy and well-rounded. So maybe way back when I went to my early education, maybe they were onto something that we lost for a period of decades that we're starting to find again. People that I consider polymaths these days, I don't know whether they would see themselves as such, are also very highly gifted in analytical skills. And I could give you a couple names that might sound pretty familiar if you wanted those names, Sharif. But they also compose music or play music, and a lot of that is classical in orientation, which I find very interesting. So perhaps there's something to the classical structure. Now, for me, I don't play much music, but I do have a great deal of musical appreciation. And for many years, I had a family that I associated with that was very strong into music. The matriarch of the family went to Juilliard and taught at major campuses across the U.S. The oldest brother had a PhD and was a symphony in music and was a symphony conductor, and yet very analytical, very well balanced. It exemplifies all the things that I'm trying to say, that where that balance probably comes back to our original thought for today about music therapy, except the therapy was built into the everyday lifestyle as far as needing to learn and to, in some cases, to be able to generate or write music. So maybe I could get to be a little more well-balanced if I went back and picked that trumpet back up or played on the piano some more. I'm not quite sure. Now, what the current requirements are is part of my longevity regimen that I do, as I'm reminded that I get older and have a few more aches and pains each year. I want to control what I can control during this process. Part of my longevity regimen is keeping my brain active, and I just finished up another college degree for a subject area that I was very much interested in, and I decided to go for the degree instead of just taking classes because it gave me a roadmap, and to make sure that the information that I got out of that area that I was searching to know more about would be well balanced. There was no music requirement. There were no artistic requirements for that particular degree. And it was a Bachelor of Science degree, so it was heavy into the math area. And I think math also helps with keeping our brain balanced too. And music is in itself all mathematical relationships of notes and so forth. So there's some correlation there as well. So, Rob, I've gone on about your early question about whether in the early days there was some, and then I can verify that at least for the particular degree that I went for, there wasn't anything recently. But I would hope to see that. I would like to see all colleges and universities add that requirement back in.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, what will be your advice for our audience to improve their mental health, and what is the concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, my advice remains: own it. Your mental health is your responsibility. If you find yourself in environments that damage your mental health, remove yourself from that environment. If you can't remove yourself from that environment, find a quiet place in your own head and think happy thoughts. As I say, what I do when I'm getting aggravated or whatever, if we got the time, I either read or I mentally write a book I'll probably never publish. So I've been writing that book in my head for decades now. But I always figure it another angle or something else. And it's just amazing how much time I can just go through, and an aggravation I can go through just by thinking out chapters and characters and some of the other stuff. And that's my way of coping with issues. Remember to be nice. There's no downside that I can see to being nice. I mean, even if somebody's being incredibly abusive to you, being incredibly abusive back doesn't seem to solve the problem, and either don't respond or just respond nicely. I was chatting with somebody the other day that was just saying they were incredibly aggrieved because they were treated unreasonably badly by a friend, and I said well, and now they weren't talking, and I said, and how can I fix this? I said, well, you might want to just call up and ask them what's going on in their life. I mean, what are they angry at? Try apologizing. I know it wasn't your fault, but try apologizing. Just try and re-engaging. But try to get to the heart of why they're angry, and maybe help them get over whatever is causing it. That was something you did. Just plan on apologizing for whatever it is that they're angry at, whether you feel you're responsible or not. See if that mitigates it. I mean, keep your goal in mind, which is maintaining the friendship, and take that as a priority, not prevailing in an overall argument. And by the way, when it comes to arguments, if you know what topics are going to set off somebody that you're with and destroy an evening and afternoon, just stay off those topics. Redirect. It's by the way, it's training that those of us that have worn a badge go through, is how to de-escalate. And I had one of those instances the other day where a couple kids who felt that my taking pictures of them speeding through a park at 70 miles an hour was inappropriate, and I de-escalated. They just smiled, chatted them down, didn't yell, didn't threaten. And the very next weekend, these same kids approached another guy in my age group, grabbed him, and tried to beat the crap out of him because that guy didn't de-escalate, and the kids got felony arrested. So it went south really fast. So, and the thing is, you don't want to be in the middle of that. There is really no upside, particularly as you get older, getting into a physical altercation. It will take you a long while to recover from injuries. None of us are really John Wick. And one thing I should add as we close off: learn Dunning-Kruger. Once you recognize that people often, the less they know, the more expert they sound. One, you don't want to be that person. So make sure you're well grounded in your advice and consultation, which is why I've been kind of hedging a bit, because I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist in this. But also recognize it in others. If somebody's coming back as incredibly authoritative and they're absolutely right, but you kind of think maybe not, chances are that's Dunning-Kruger kicking in, and it's not somebody's advice you want to follow. And somebody that's locked into Dunning-Kruger, who's always an expert in something they don't know about, don't figure they're expert in something else. It's amazing to me how many people go to medical doctors and ask them for investment advice. That's not their area of specialty. Or anything else. A mathematician talking about medical issues is probably not going to work either. And we had a ton of that going on during the pandemic, where suddenly everybody was an expert on viruses, and I would say 99% of them weren't. So in the end, learn Dunning-Kruger. That will both coach your own behavior and allow you to avoid people that can be incredibly damaging, either to work for or to be around. People that just think that they cannot be wrong no matter what happens. Those are not people. Their lives will not end well, and you don't want any part of that parade. So learn that, and in the end, just craft the life you want to end with. Figure out what do you want to remember when you get to those last 15 minutes of your life, and we're all going to be there. We're almost all of us are, well, some of us will die in our sleep, which would be nice. But for a lot of us, we're going to have a few minutes there towards the end. We're mostly going to be looking back on our life. And what is it you want to see? How do you want to remember? So it doesn't really matter what other people are. When you're gone, you're gone. But how do you want to remember your life? Really take ownership. If you're constantly going around blaming other people for what's going on in your life, something's really wrong. And what's wrong is you haven't taken ownership. And once you take ownership, you can dig yourself out of almost anything. The number of people that have come from homelessness and become top politicians, top businessmen, are legion. And most of it, a lot of it, don't get me wrong, a lot of it was luck. But a lot of it was just realizing that the only person that was going to dig them out of what they were in was them. And once you recognize that and take responsibility, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And I guess one other comment is, and I've said this before, is don't chase wealth, or things. Chase happiness. Decide what it is you enjoy, and try to get as much of that as possible. I still think back of the friend of mine that that was working towards retirement, was very highly paid, and then 6 months before he postponed his retirement because he was making so much money, and then 6 months before he retired, he got a blood clot in his leg when traveling. It got to his brain before they could get down on the ground and get to the hospital, and he died in no retirement. His wife, of course, was devastated because they were going to spend all this time together. And if he'd just been enjoying more life when he was younger, he might not have died. The thing is what actually killed him was the overwork in this particular case. But take your enjoyment where you can, and make your personal happiness and your mental health a priority. And there's a better chance you'll achieve it that way. I guess Yogi Berra says if you don't know where you're going, you're probably not going to get there. Pick your destination to make that destination personal happiness and well-being. On to David.
Yes. Wow. What excellent comments. I'm not sure how much I can add to that, but I'll make an effort here. So what I want to say for my advice and closing remarks is to get and help promote good mental health. Start with good physical health. Taking care of your physical health, there's strong correlation between physical and mental health. So that means, eating right, getting enough sleep, engaging in some exercise. We've already talked about things that you can do to improve mood and reduce stress. Some of those are like connecting with others. Connect with others in person, connect with others, pick up the phone, do video chats, but find some way to do that. And then those stress reduction techniques, whether it be yoga, whether it be meditation, whether it be prayer, whether it just be some quiet time, deep breathing exercises, those are all things that can help. Now, we want to try to stay away from those negative triggers that get to us, and we raged on about the news and other such things, but you can't stay away from it all. So challenge negative thinking when it comes up, something that you feel that's leading to your anxiety or depression. And just because you have a negative thought doesn't mean that negative thought is true, so hold it up to the light and test it. And that may help as well. And I loved what Rob had to say about joy, because joy really is the center. Find things that you like. Maybe you're in a job that you don't like and you can't change that job. Try a hobby, try some kind of creative pursuit that you really like, and fill in the other time that you have with something that is going to boost your mood and promote, better feelings. And then that helps amplify all the other things that I talked about, because once you can emanate some joy to those that are around you and to others, that just raises that whole joy level for everyone and greatly improves the situation. So there's some advice, and I'm giving myself that advice as well. I don't hold myself as any kind of expert in this area. I can tell you some of my successes, and just remember that wherever you have successes, they probably didn't start out as a success, so they started out as challenges. So we all have those. So find others, do the things that you know that you can do, control what you can. Those are all quite beneficial. So with that, Dr. Sharif had to leave, and he's asked me to say goodbye to everybody and to go ahead and shut down the show. And I'm sure that as we leave here, this recording will continue. So Rob, see you another time. And that ends it for today.